So welcome everyone to the monthly JB Media Digital Drop-In webinar. We're really excited to have all of you here today. This topic, I think, is something that's really personally important to me, and that is talking about how we deal with our marketing situation for our business or our organization or brand in the midst of what's happening in the world. So I appreciate everyone attending today because I think this is something as business owners and marketing and communications professionals that we all need to be kind of talking about and sharing ideas with each other and really connecting around. Because since this situation right now is so unique and different from anything we've experienced, none of us really know all the answers. So I really want to encourage you, as Justin and I share some of our experiences and our ideas today, please feel free to use the Q&A feature or the chat feature to add in questions that you have or even thoughts that you just want to share with the rest of the group. Essentially, like I said, I think this is a time where we all need to come together and support each other in this situation and figure out how to navigate what's happening. So I'd love for this to be a conversation as we go through the next hour. Also, just a couple of housekeeping tips. Essentially, you are all on mute and your videos are turned off. So you'll be seeing Justin and I share our slide decks. We will be recording this webinar and we will be sharing with everyone who's attending today the recording and the slide deck as well. So you can be taking notes and things like that if you would like, but also you will get a copy of this and you can listen to it later and review the information if that's helpful. So again, to start us off, I just wanted to talk really quick about some of my inspiration for this topic. And one of the things I've been thinking a lot about as a business owner and as a marketing person who's working with lots of other businesses is this idea of adapting and what that really means. So I chose to use the image of polar bears today because if you didn't know, in nature, polar bears are one of the most adaptable species on the planet because they live in an incredibly harsh environment. So over time, polar bears have become incredibly intelligent. They are considered the most intelligent bear, as far as I know from studying them, out of all the different species of bear. And it's because the challenges they face living in such a cold and barren environment, and now, of course, the challenges that they've been facing due to climate change have really caused the entire species to adapt over time and become used to the new things that they're confronting. So I feel like in some ways, polar bears for me have been a great sort of spirit animal recently to help me kind of think about how I need to engage with the situation that's happening. So just to define what the word adapt means, because it is different than maybe the word transformation or evolution, adapt really means to change something to suit different conditions or uses, to change your ideas or behavior to make them suitable for a new situation. And with living things, when we adapt, it means that we change slightly over time so that we can continue to exist in a particular environment. So I just wanted to start by setting this framework for our thinking today, because I feel like what we're all confronting is something that is going to be a longer process, and it's something that's going to be kind of a permanent shift in the way that we manage our communications, our businesses, our interactions with people. And so we're not going to have all the answers right away, right? I think over the next few months, we're going to be adapting to new situations and new developments, and it's going to be happening individually as people. It's going to be happening within our businesses, which may include other people, and within our organizations. It's going to be happening inside of our industry. It's going to be happening inside of our regions, inside of our country, inside of a variety of different things, from the macro to the micro. So I know for me, it's just been helpful to, instead of focusing on some of the bigger questions and some of the stressors, to really focus on the fact that adapting is actually natural. We have the ability to do it. And it's really about understanding that there are new conditions, new situations that we have to operate in. And it's something that we're going to be doing over time. It's not something we have to have all the answers to today. So that's again why I wanted to encourage everyone for this to be a conversation, to use the chat and the Q&A to ask questions or to just provide feedback to the rest of us, because I think all of us will move through this process easier if we're supporting each other and we're learning from each other and we're sharing different ideas and different approaches. So the big question that we wanted to discuss today was, how do we rise to the marketing challenge that we have right now? And I'm going to start first by talking about a few things that I've been really thinking about and working with students and clients about. And then I'm going to let Justin share some of his ideas and what he's seeing from an agency perspective. But I think one of the things that we can all see happening right now is that people are very emotional, right? So the entire world right now is having an emotional response to the different things that are happening across our regions, our country, and even beyond that. And because of that emotional climate, I think as communicators and marketers, we really have to dig deep as we move forward with our conversations online and in other ways, because the way that people were reacting in January is not necessarily an indicator of how they're reacting now. And the things that people need and want, even a month ago, are maybe not the same as what they need and want in this moment. So it's causing us to really listen, really pay attention, and to just really have, I think, a higher level of emotional intelligence, which a lot of you who've been to my webinars before or taken some of my classes know that I feel is a very important skill in marketing. And I'm so glad that I've been sharing that with people over the last few years, because I think right now is a great time where you see, if you have developed some of those skills, that you're able to really navigate these changes in an easier way. And Elizabeth, I see your comment. You like the word adapt a lot better than pivot, because pivot is fast becoming a jargon word. And that, you believe that when we use jargon words, it starts to separate us from the people that we're talking with if they're outside of that circle. So I really appreciate that comment, because I do think you are correct. Pivoting, which I think we're all doing, is a very valid word to use. But I think if we really look at the long term, we start to see that we're going to be doing more than pivoting, right? We're really going to be learning how to operate in a new sort of climate, especially in business. So the things that I want to talk about, like I said, are definitely ideas and conversations that I am having with a lot of my consulting clients right now, and especially some students as they try to show up where their customers are and provide services and products in a way that's really relevant to the moment now. And again, for some people, what's relevant is not that different than what they were doing a month or two before. For other companies and organizations, what's relevant right now is extremely different than what they were doing a month or two ago. So that's where, depending on your industry, depending on your customer base, and even depending on the region in which your customers are located, there's going to be different things that you're trying to navigate and adapt to. And I've noticed this definitely because I have clients and students, all around the East Coast and some on the West Coast and even some outside of the US. And depending on where these people are located, there are just different things that are going on, different considerations that I have to make, even different sensitivities that I have to the situations that are unfolding for people. So I think what I'm going to share right now are things that are maybe somewhat more internal, somewhat more perspective-based, but I do think that they have an impact and an effect on the strategies that you choose. So the first thing that I think we need to do at this time is really focus on our brand's core stories. So I know I don't need to tell anybody on this call that storytelling is important. We all know that. That's, I think, something everyone who's worked in any type of marketing or communications knows. But what I see is that we have a real opportunity in some cases right now, because selling products to people and acting like everything is normal, usually creates kind of a backlash from customer bases right now. Instead of continuing forward on our sales kind of trajectory, we might need to start really looking at more storytelling and more connecting with people so that the brand feels relatable to the customers. And again, I'm always teaching this concept and it's always important. But right now, especially, I think it's even more important. And it's not just because the stories are what are going to make people feel, like I said, more emotionally connected to the brand, but it's also because right now, sharing the experience of your business or organization, being honest and transparent about where you're at currently in the state of things, being really authentic about struggles versus successes, fears versus the different things where you're trying to be courageous and brave. All of that stuff, I think, makes your customer base feel like you're in it with them. And I mentioned to somebody recently that the phrase, we're all in it together, or we're all in this together, I've seen so many commercials with that in the last 2 weeks that that phrase actually started turning me off because I felt like a lot of, corporations and a lot of bigger businesses are kind of throwing that into a lot of their marketing. I think we can make that point without even necessarily repeating that phrase over and over by simply sharing what's happening with our brands on the day to day, sharing what's going on, very honestly and openly, so that people kind of know, like, you are experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing. And thank you, Nikki. Yeah, I'm really wanting to be careful of what exactly Elizabeth pointed out, which is overusing certain things to the point where it just sort of turns people off. The other thing I want to encourage everyone to do, and not everyone has extra time right now, some of us are working a lot, but I feel like one of the things we really want to think about is when we're sharing our stories and we're being more real and honest and open, how can we do that from a multimedia perspective? So how can we do that in our Instagram stories, our Facebook stories? How can we use more video content to share what's happening in the moment? How can we offer more webinars or events for our customers to attend where they get to just be a part of the brand, even though maybe they can't walk into our store or attend the events like they usually would? So I want to encourage everyone that in this time, if you can, again, experimenting with new, different types of tools that you haven't used before can be really valuable. Adding some video to your website can be really valuable right now, because that connection that you make talking directly to your customers on video is very different than just giving them a written COVID-19 update, right? So I feel like if you innovate on that level, you can really stand out in comparison. So a good example of this is, I'm sure all of you have gotten the same amount of emails that I have gotten from companies about their COVID-19 response and what's happening. There's so many things to read through. I would never have enough time to do it. So using those multimedia tools can be a different way to really make those connections faster. The other thing I've been encouraging everyone to do is, in this sort of crisis moment that we're having across multiple levels of our society, I think it's a really important time for brands to root themselves in their core values and really find their voice. So again, a lot of times when we're marketing, we're thinking a lot about sales, generating revenue, the bottom line, and of course our businesses run on that. So we're never going to be able to give up our focus on those things. But I do think what moments like this give us the opportunity to do is figure out how to express our core values in a deeper way, and how to share with people that ourselves as leaders in our company, or even our own staff members, how are they expressing and living those core values as well? So we all know the reason that we even share core values with our customers, again, is to make that deeper connection with them and have them feel aligned with us. And so I really encourage everybody to think about this when you're working on your social media or your blogs or your emails. Think about how you can establish that voice in a deeper way. And Bridget, I see your comment. You need to update your website homepage and get that COVID update off and share more real stuff. So yeah, thanks for confirming that that makes sense to some of you, because I really do feel like now that everybody knows what's happening and we know the situation, we now need to kind of move into having, I think, more kind of real personalized conversations in order to make those connections. And I want to encourage you, don't be afraid to let your style and your tone shift. Your brand can stay intact while your tone shifts. So I feel like with a lot of people right now, when we're talking about marketing, we're getting more personal, we're getting more conversational, we're being more honest and emotional about what's happening in the literal words that we say, because we know that just acting like everything is fine and throwing commercialized content at people is not necessarily getting the results that we would usually see. And it's because I think everyone's tone has shifted in general. The third thing that I think we all have to start doing is really listening very carefully to our audiences. So I've been spending a lot of time looking at analytics. I was working yesterday on Facebook and Instagram ad campaigns, and I've been running shorter campaigns with very clear messaging. They are still sales focused. So what I was working on was for e-commerce, and we were definitely still promoting a product line that is coming out. But I really ran a number of different types of ads and then started to really pay attention to the results. Because for me, that's listening to the audience. That's understanding what is making them pay attention and what is literally driving them to not pay attention. So I think data is going to be really valuable if you have it available, to sort of do that listening process. And then I've also been going through a lot of social media accounts for our consulting clients and literally reading the responses from people, right? So I can get a feel for what is making people feel better. And even some things that are making people feel frustrated or upset, or things that are maybe not as positive. But by doing that, we're really learning what are our audiences dealing with, struggling with, who are the different types of people, how are their different reactions coming up. So I just want us to take this time when we have it to really look at how people are conversating about different things that you're posting, really look at the data to see what they're responding to. And anything that is negative, I just want to encourage you to open up the conversation, and don't be afraid to do that and to be personal. Don't be afraid to apologize to people if they feel like you've said something insensitive. Just own it, right? Because in a lot of ways right now, all people want to do is be heard because they're having higher levels of emotion. And even though, yes, there are some crazy people that will get upset and reactionary, the truth is that most people, when they feel like you're hearing them, it's going to bring that emotional response down. So I want us to just, be open to that as, again, owners of our companies, or if we're working for a company, to really be having that conversation about how we can manage that, because it's really actually offering great customer service, which I think is something we all care about. So how can you meet people where they're at, and how can you adjust the different types of conversations you're having to really meet their needs? And that you can sometimes assume some of that, but because of the feedback loops we have in the digital world, there are some great ways where you can go and get that information, and that information will help you adapt. I think when it comes to pivoting, what we really want to pivot is our strategies, right? So some of the ways that we're doing things have to change in order for our business to adapt to the new environment. So one thing that I'm encouraging people to do is to rethink your business models in some ways. So this can feel like a really big, intimidating piece, and it can feel scary because what if I pivot my model and then in 2 weeks something changes, right? So it's not something that I want you to approach as reactionary. But I do think one of the things Justin and I were able to do is immediately say, okay, we have a lot of different things that we're offering, but one new thing we could bring to the table that we haven't done before is offer some live trainings where people get to take live classes with me each week. I've been doing pre-recorded classes for a long time, but a live training series held on Zoom was something new to me. Adjusting our business model to encompass something like that actually ended up being very successful, and not just for us, but also for the students. We created a system where we could really help them, and we could also keep the business running to a certain extent. So those type of innovations are really positive things that you can consider. So there may be parts of your model that you could adjust. There may be things that you've considered doing, but you've just never had time to do, or you've never had enough reason to do it. But the market is changing while we talk right now. So think about that. Pause your advertising if you need to. So again, I had a couple consulting clients where we really took a break at the end of March and the beginning of April to rethink what we were doing, because we wanted to make sure that what we were putting out there for advertising campaigns was something that people were going to be able to react to in a positive way. And it wasn't going to be something that just felt really tone deaf or really insensitive. So don't be afraid to pause for a second and reevaluate those things, and maybe even start some really new types of campaigns that are very different than the ones you were doing before. Yeah, and Bridget, I agree. Live trainings are getting more important just because people need that connection piece, which was part of what inspired that shift for me. And then if you need to reduce spending, I think it's really important, again, to go back to your data and think about how you're going to reduce that spending and where. So if you have been tracking a lot of your digital marketing, you can typically see where you are getting the results, and you can see where maybe you have the ability to reduce your budget or reduce your time expenditure even. So I think what we don't want to do is panic and kind of shut everything down. And I'm not really saying that just because I'm a person who gets paid to help with marketing. I'm saying that because it's sort of like a faucet. We don't want to just take this faucet we've created that has been driving revenue and kind of just turn it off because we're scared. We really want to go back to kind of using the facts and the information that we've gathered about our audiences to say, you know, we can dial back in these 3 places, but this one area we should continue forward because we're actually still getting connections with people that are still coming to us for information, and we want to make sure that we're managing those channels appropriately. And then lastly, I think we all have to step it up and act with courage and compassion. So on a personal note, my entire family, except for my dad, all live in New Jersey. And it's been really hard because even though we're having a very different experience down here in the South right now, I'm very aware of what's happening in New Jersey, and I'm talking to my family there regularly and my friends. I also have a lot of friends in New York. And so sometimes I've had to remind myself, being in North Carolina, I have a different perspective than other places in the country. And so I have to really be compassionate about how I'm saying things, especially if I'm trying to reach a national audience, because each different region in the country is experiencing something slightly different, and that's creating different types of reactions. And so I just think, in a general sense, for us to come from that place of courage and compassion as professionals and as leaders, there's a few things we want to do. We want to stay grounded. And I think we all have to focus on whatever we define as self-care, not just for ourselves, but the other people that we work with. So if you work with a team, you need to be thinking about them and yourself, right? How do we all take care of ourselves? How do we stay focused? And how do we keep ourselves from getting kind of caught up in the stress? I also think we want to make sure that we're taking time out on a weekly basis to stand in the shoes of other people. So my team has lovingly reminded me that I don't have kids. And that is a very different experience right now than our team members that are at home with their children. Of course, I was never being insensitive about not thinking about that. It's just something that's not on my radar every day. So it's been important for the other team members to remind me of that piece. And then, like I said, for me, I really believe that right now, a lot of us are being challenged to stand as the best version of ourselves, not just personally, but also professionally. And I think that translates over to our brands as well. So how does your company or organization step up right now and become the best version of itself? What does that look like? And if we can lead with that type of courage and that type of compassion, then our marketing is still going to be effective. We're still going to be building the relationships that are so important. And as we move forward and we all adapt to this new situation, we will come out on the other side with our networks intact, and we may even come out with them more bonded to us than they were before. So again, if you have questions or thoughts, please feel free to type them in. I want to go ahead and let Justin, I think you can grab the screen if you'd like to share your screen, and he's going to take us through some of his suggestions as well.
Sarah, I actually don't have the slide deck pulled up right now.
Okay, great. I
You
can
want to
click
just,
through the slides if you want, if you just want to take over talking.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. So I added a few slides here at the end. Mine are maybe slightly more tactical and strategic in some ways, basically based on things I'm seeing. So as most of you know, I actually I'm an owner in 3 different businesses. Each one is experiencing very different impacts from the pandemic. So we've had to adjust, adapt, as we're saying here in this webinar, across different business models, different revenue models, and it's been an interesting challenge. And I'm still feeling like I have new ideas almost every day. Um, so one idea that I wanted to share, one concept, is focusing on efficiency. Before I jump into that, Sarah, is the background noise behind me coming through pretty loud or no?
I don't hear it at all. If
Okay,
anybody else hears
it's
it, yeah,
distracting
Jen
me a
is
little
fine
bit,
too.
but
You should be
I'm glad
good.
it's not coming through. There's a weed whacker or something kind of right outside that window, I think. But anyway, I'll try to ignore it and think it seems to be moving on. So, um, you know, this has always been something I've focused on: being efficient with my time, being efficient with, what I ask my team to do. I think I now have a total of 18 team members across the 3 different companies, and I take very seriously what I request other people to do. One thing that uh, one thing I've tried to do in my career is not ask other people to do things that I wouldn't want to do. Or, I mean, there's certain things that we have to do in business that we don't love to do, but I'm usually, willing to jump in and help even on the most tedious projects and tasks. I've been doing quite a bit of tedious manual list building and work myself. But where we can, especially in a time when our time might be, being pulled in different directions with family at home and just a different sort of lifestyle, thinking about ways we can employ efficiency to help, keep things moving forward. So at JB Media, we are using a couple of efficiency tools. I think there's a few actually that I'm not, I didn't even include here, but one that we're using is an SEO research and content strategy tool called ClearScope. What ClearScope does, if you put a keyword in, it analyzes the first 30 search results, and it'll tell you which phrases, which words are used most common on the top 30 pages. And then you can upload a Google Doc or a page you're writing, and it'll score you on how well you incorporated those top keywords in your page. So that's a really cool tool. Fortunately, we got involved in that tool when it was in its beta. So we're actually kind of grandfathered in at a lower price point. The price is going up for that. And then we're also using rev.com, which we've been using rev.com for years to, when we're doing a blog about a topic we don't know much about, we might interview an expert. We might even be interviewing the person who ultimately will be the byline of the article with the client, someone on the client side. Or it might be we're doing research and interviewing several different people. Well, it's really time intensive to listen to a recording if you're not a professional transcriptionist and try to write down the words people said in the interview. Rev.com will allow you to pay a professional transcriptionist for about $1 per minute to transcribe a recording. So for a 20-minute interview, that might be $20, which is reasonable. But they also have an AI version, which recently increased from 5 cents a minute to 25 cents a minute. So for a 20-minute video, it's $5 to get an automated transcription. And then that might take a little bit more time for you to clean it up and edit it. But if that difference between $5 and $20 is meaningful, you could do the work yourself to clean it up. But you can still get something back really in a few minutes. You can send your video or audio file, get back a transcription draft in a few minutes rather than waiting a few hours, clean it up in maybe 20 to 30 minutes yourself, and then have something that you can use as a blog post or the start of a blog post. Another thing we're doing more now, as we're building these outreach lists for different events we're helping promote, we're also testing some tools that allow us to do email autocomplete or autofill email. So we create a template email and then pick out specific people we want to reach out to and send them personalized emails. We actually had our most successful outreach for one of our event clients this month. We reached out to 500 different people, and we got 40 partnerships lined up to help promote the event. And that was in only like 2 weeks of work. So that's an example of efficiency helping, that event was going to be way more successful because it's got 40 people promoting it than it would if it's just the client promoting it. So we use the AI, or not AI, but an automation tool for that outreach. And we very carefully selected people we thought would be interested. We just saved the time and not having to draft 500 emails. We just use a tool to send them out quickly.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Chris was just chatting in that he really appreciated the information on transcription, that's information. It's really interesting. And then I just wanted to give a shout out to Scott, who chatted in, saying that he thinks it's worth noting that professionals working from home, even if they're accustomed to it, we shouldn't necessarily benchmark our personal performance against things that were quote unquote normal. In other words, it's okay to feel that you're not operating the same way. Even if you might have more free time, it's okay to be distracted and still trying. In my opinion, that means some of us are still trying to find our legs and our focus and our groundedness in this scenario. So I just want to say thanks, Scott, for sharing that, because I think that's an important thing to remember. I know my efficiency, I've had to recalibrate it over the last couple weeks. So, it's adjusting to that new situation of, not being in my normal office situation that's required that.
Next thing I wanted to mention, and this isn't relevant for everyone, this is, I think, going to be especially relevant for retail, brick and mortar, and other types of businesses that rely on in-person customers. This will be relevant once we reopen businesses. This should be kind of sort of self-explanatory, I believe, but it seems logical to me that as the restrictions on movement and travel are eased, people will be comfortable traveling short distances to go places. And they also might be really interested in getting out of their house locally and trying things that they either never have tried locally or haven't tried in a long time, just because they've been pent up in their house for 6 weeks or whatever, however long it'll be by the time we get to phase 2 or phase 3 of North Carolina. And I'm sure we have people outside of North Carolina on this call, but I'm just thinking specifically there. Like, I know how, there's a very regimented plan for North Carolina of how different types of businesses will be able to open. Some starting Friday and others starting on around the 22nd if things go well the first 2 weeks, and then more later in the summer or later spring. So I do feel that a lot of Asheville businesses and a lot of businesses in tourism and in hospitality have historically relied heavily on people coming in from out of town. Sometimes that means they're flying in or driving long distances to get here. And I know that in the beginning, especially, that's not going to be realistic. So you might need to adjust your marketing strategy to understand how to do local targeting, maybe brush up your local SEO, brush up your local Facebook strategy, as far as paid Facebook advertising, targeting locals, and other tactics that can make sense for your business model to get people locally to come visit you and start patronizing you when you open up. And then another one, this is one thing that sort of struck me. It's also kind of self-explanatory. Obviously, during this time, some e-commerce businesses or businesses that offer, delivery or subscription services have been doing extremely well. I know some former clients of ours and some current clients are actually doing the best they've ever done because their consumer behavior has changed. I also know personally, there was a few businesses that I wanted to patronize locally that I couldn't. And it's because their website didn't allow me to buy a gift certificate from their site. And I didn't trust the national third-party sites that claim to sell local gift certificates. I don't think that I wasn't confident that they were actually giving me a real gift certificate to that business, more like just a Visa gift card that was branded or something like that, which doesn't necessarily help that business. So ultimately what I ended up doing is buying from either a different site or a national site. So these specifically, I was buying employee gifts on each employee's annual anniversary. We buy gift cards for them for something that they want to get locally usually, and typically we go and buy those from the business and give them to them in a thank you card, which I write. But this month and last month, I've done people's annual reviews on Zoom, which has been interesting. And I've asked them what they want for their gift, and they've sent me 3 to 5 sort of ordered choices. And in one case, I went to one website and I tried to check out and it didn't work. So I gave up. I went to a second site on the list, and ended up, that didn't even have an option to buy a gift card. So I ended up with a national e-commerce website, which was his third choice, buying a gift certificate for guitarcenter.com. And that was, something he wanted, but there was also a restaurant and a grocery store locally that he wanted more, and I couldn't buy those online. So any business should be able to, work that out relatively quickly. And then we're also consulting with a couple businesses that are moving into selling things online that were long thinking about it, but now this current situation has really just encouraged, accelerated their timeline to do that for obvious reasons. So if that's something you're thinking about, now's the time to do it. You potentially have more time, and it might be a good use of any grant or loan funds you get is to invest in something like this if you need to. I know that not all those funds can be used in this kind of way as far as like hiring outside help for stuff like this, but that's something to consider using some of your resources for right now, is building your online sales platform, especially if it's something you've been considering. This is, I think, my last one. This slide is about, what are you working on? If, different, like Sarah said earlier, different people are experiencing this differently. Me personally, it's been a really busy couple of weeks because I've had, we have 25 clients, a couple hundred students, and then Romantic Asheville, which we now own, has 300 or 400 customers. Of course, all those customers are impacted by, they're all in the tourism and hospitality industry. With this, other businesses, some of our clients are doing better, and some of our clients are potentially going out of business or really struggling. So we're having to help those clients and customers and students in new ways, adopt to new strategies and try new things, or as we've said, pivot or adapt their business models altogether. We're also doing that for all 3 of our companies in different ways. But one way we've done that is with, some of you probably seen, Sarah created a new course that just launched a couple weeks ago, or I think last Monday actually, about how to create your own online course. So people who want to learn how to teach something online, and I just got an email like while I was on this call from the city of Asheville asking if we have any resources for teaching people how to create online courses. So I'm going to follow up with him later and say, we actually have a course we just created for that, and see if there's a way we can work with them to run that through for some of their people that they need that kind of training. But so we have, being proactive with that is something we've done for the obvious need of replacing workshops and in-person training that we had canceled for our training business, but also feeling like Sarah had a unique skill set and some pre-developed curriculum that might be relevant right now. So if you're in a situation where you have something you know how to do that you historically have taught in person or have wanted to consider, teaching as part of your next phase of your career, now's a good time to consider that. And that's not only true of teaching, but other things too. If you're thinking about launching a new business, you're thinking about learning a new skill or transitioning your career, now's a great time to learn something new, brush up on what you want to do next, start a new business, or write a book. I have a lot of friends who are writers, and many of them are saying that they're getting a lot done right now. They may not be making the same amount of income as they're used to from public speaking or other things, but they're getting that next book done quicker than they thought they would because they have more time to work on it. So those are just a few examples. I know that doesn't apply to every business model, and in certain cases, or business or professional career path. But I think for a lot of people, if you could kind of try to put yourself in that opportunity mindset and creative thinking, you can figure out some use of your time if you happen to be someone who has more downtime. Me personally, I'm trying to write an ebook. I haven't had the time because I've just been working really long hours every day.
Great. Well, thanks so much for that, Justin. We do have a question coming in from Nikki, And Nikki basically is an acupuncturist who works
Yeah.
specifically with people who have pain and complex syndromes. She's
Yeah.
saying, do we have any specific locally oriented SEO, search, or advertising strategies to share? And so I wanted to just throw out a couple things, Nikki. And again, that question is a little bit broad. So if you want to chat in or add kind of more information about exactly what it is that you are trying to possibly do, maybe you're already doing some things and you want to add to it. But I would say in general, especially for local businesses like yours that maybe have a practice where people were coming through the door, we're going to rely on some of the tools that we all know are very helpful. So I'm still helping people work on Google My Business, making sure that everything in their Google My Business is accurate, the hours have been changed, that we're using the posting feature sometimes to let people know that we've got online events happening instead of in person, letting people know different, things that we're posting to our website about changes to our brick and mortar locations. So I think Google My Business, if you've already claimed that listing and you've used it before, it's a great tool. And one of the most important things is to make sure that everything is up there is accurate. So you'll notice a lot of restaurants are already doing this, right? If you Google them, their Google My Business listing comes up and all that information has been updated and is kind of letting people know, hey, we're doing takeout, we're doing this, we're doing that. And they're trying to really let people know through that tool what's happening at their physical brick and mortar location and with their products and services. I think the other thing that we're really focusing on is website updates, making sure that you've got maybe a banner across your website that says your hours have changed. I have a chiropractor right now. She locally, she works mostly through her website and Facebook and their email newsletter. And so she's a good example of somebody that I think has done a great job of, as their hours have had to change, they were closed down for a couple of weeks. The protocols of what is required before you come for an appointment has changed now that they're allowing appointments again. And so I think they've really done a great job of unifying both their Google My Business, their Facebook page, and their website to have all accurate information that's clear. As far as advertising, I am still actually getting really good success with people on Facebook and Instagram advertising, which if you live in Western North Carolina, I think Facebook and Instagram advertising of all the social media has some of the best potential here. And so I have continued doing Facebook advertising strategies and Instagram that have worked very well, although we have spent a lot of time rethinking the messaging and coming up with ways to engage the community in things that aren't direct sales. To engage them in more storytelling, more video, so that they can feel kind of like they're having this, like I said, back and forth relationship or conversation with the business or the organization. And then when we want to offer them something that's actually an actual product sale or a service, opportunity, we're really thinking about the way that we frame it. I've definitely been discounting prices with a few different clients to sort of let people know, hey, we are doing everything we can to provide you the things that you need in a way that you need them in an affordable situation. For one client, as an example, they couldn't necessarily discount every product that they offer, but they came up with a specific line of products that could be discounted. And that has actually been a fairly good campaign so far, even though it's only been running for a couple of weeks. So I think Facebook and Instagram offer some good advertising opportunities right now as well. And one little pro tip I'll give you is I have been running more campaigns to the fans of different businesses first. So on Facebook, you can definitely target advertising campaigns directly to the people that are already in your fan base. And I think activating them, building the relationship with them, connecting with them, outside of just trying to go after a bunch of new people that maybe haven't heard about you before or aren't as familiar with the brand. I just want us to think about that because I think the tone has to be different. The way you're talking to people is a little different. And I'm spending a lot of time thinking about how we connect to the people who already support the business versus how we try to campaign to people who are new to the business. So those are just some suggestions I would give you. And I don't know if you have anything you want to add, Justin.
Not too much. There are a lot of different local strategies that could be considered. you're going to be competing, I guess, with a lot of other similar businesses kind of going for the same strategies right now. So that'll be one challenge. But local understanding the local targeting options on Facebook ads is probably the most important thing, alongside understanding local SEO, which helps you with your Google Map rankings. That's such a specific skill set and technical approach that even though I've personally have 17 years of SEO experience and studied it for thousands of hours, and we have a team of people who are, skilled at various levels on our team, we don't offer local SEO because it's entirely different algorithm. We work with a couple of different local providers. We work with Casey from Mountain Laurel Digital, and Rich Owings from Local is Where It's At. Obviously, his business is all about local marketing. So we refer most of our local SEO projects to them, or we subcontract them to do the work on larger accounts.
And then we have a question from Greg and Ashley about, you were just talking about, sending personalized emails, Justin, and
Yeah.
they were just wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit more. And are you using some type of platform or system to send those emails? Could you just share a little more of that strategy?
Yes. I don't remember off the top of my head the name of the platform. I'll have to try to maybe search for it in our Slack conversations with the team. We're using some email system. It's a system that helps. You can create a form letter where you kind of you put a spreadsheet together of the people you want to contact, their name and other variables you want the form fill into the email, and then it automatically will go through the list and autofill those fields and send emails out one at a time. So it appears to be, like you sent a personal email. I've also, when I helped promote the course that Sarah launched last week, I took a less time intensive approach to some degree. It was still very time intensive. I personally went through all 7,000 of my Gmail contacts. Took about 3 hours, and I was just kind of scanning as fast as I could, and moving the ones that I thought would be interested in that course into a list. The list ended up being about 300 people long, and I wrote a personal letter, but it was not. It said like "Dear friends," and it talked about how we're adjusting our strategies right now and how we created a course to help others do the same. Some of you may have received it. I sent it out, BCC everybody, and you can send up to 500 emails a day from Gmail. So I sent out 300 in one click of a button. But I think what Kathleen did with the other project was she sent 300 separate emails using a tool. She still had to build that list by looking at the attendees of about 500 different people who attended sessions at one of our clients' conference last fall, to pick out people who might be interested in this new conference that they're doing this summer, and to send them an invitation to become a partner for that event.
Yeah, so Greg and Ashley, I just have popped up the screen with my email on it. So what I want to invite you to do is to go ahead and email me, and what I can do is follow up with Justin. And if you don't mind, Justin, if you can find the name of that platform you're using, I can share it with Greg afterwards. And if
Yeah,
anybody
I'm going to email Kathleen right now about it.
Great. And if anybody else is interested in that same question, knowing exactly what tool Justin's talking about, I'm glad to share that name with you. So you can see my email, sarah@jbmediagroupllc.com. Just shoot me an email, and I'm glad to share some information about that. I will say Justin has done a great job over the years of working with me on a variety of email marketing strategies. And we often switch between using MailChimp and our e-newsletter, also using tools like what he's describing, and then also doing a lot of personal outreach. So I think depending on what it is you want to connect with people about, you might want to just take note of what kind of personal touch point do they need? How personal should it be? Because depending on what you're trying to offer, I think those touch points shift to whether or not an email coming or seemingly coming directly from you to that person versus them getting an e-newsletter about it. There can be very different impacts in how those work in the end. So yeah, and no problem. I'm glad that was helpful. So like I said, we're right at the top of the hour, so I want to make sure that we're not keeping people past the right time. I am glad to stay and answer any other questions in the Q&A in the chat for a few moments, so please feel free to drop them in if you would like. And as usual, I can stay on for a little bit of time. But I just want to say thanks, as usual, to Justin for joining us. And for those of you who had the chance, for sharing his little baby with us at the beginning. It was very nice to see her today. But thank you all so much for being here, for sharing this conversation with us. I hope that we'll be able to have this conversation in the future as well. And I hope that we will see you again next month for our digital drop-in. And for June, we will be talking about content strategy and really thinking about the 5 key steps to developing that. So if you're working on content and you're continuing forward with your marketing, I invite you to join us and learn some more about that next month. But thank you all for being here. Thanks, Heidi. Thanks, Jason and Ben. Great to see you all. And thank you for being here, Bria. I'm so glad this information was helpful. And like I said, you'll all receive a link to the slide deck as well as a recording of this conversation. So please feel free to share it with others that you know if it's helpful for them as well. But beyond that, have a great day, and I look forward to connecting with you all in the future.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sarah.